Very welcome, Maharajji. Now I would request our spiritual advisor and minister in charge to kindly introduce Maharajji, Swami Chidekanandaji Maharaj. Swami Chidekanandaji Maharajji.
I am not able to join properly, but anyway, as this is the continuation of the series of the lecture, I think we already know all about Maharaj. So let us continue without much ado, because I am already having trouble in joining. So please, Maharaj, continue. I am sorry for not being able to give a correct presentation. I am very sorry, because I am talking now using my phone, because laptop, this is not giving connection. So Maharaj, please, the mic is yours, Maharaj. Muted, Maharaj. You're muted.
Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishna Jagatgurum Parapadme Tvayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu Namashri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. My pranams to revered Maharaj. Namaste, everybody. Nice to be back. We'll try to, because Nirmalji had mentioned, so I'm keeping this lecture particularly a little bit shorter. So we can have a question and answer session afterwards too. I don't think I particularly kept it a little bit shorter this time, so that we can also have a question and answer session. And so I'll just jump right in. So you can all see the screen right here. And, you know, each time what I feel is that I'm going to do three things in this lecture. Number one, we're going to review the points that I mentioned in brief last time. That's really important, because a lot of times we mention a lot of subtle points. Just one or two, we'll review those points again, okay, real quickly. Secondly, in addition to what we review, we'll review the concept of God. Last time we talked about, apart from philosophical definitions of what is God, the main thing we talked about was what we give most value to. Now, the third thing is, we're going to talk about something new today, the different levels of happiness. The different levels of happiness. In particular, there's 5 different levels of happiness. This is based on an article written by Swami Chidekanandaji, who's the vice president of our order. He wrote an article in Prabodha Bharata. I really liked that article, and he talked about 5 different levels of happiness, based in part on his interpretation of the Taittiriya Upanishad. So today I'm going to discuss some of the points of his article. And in addition, I want to elaborate on some things, because I feel that there's still some unclarity about it. So I want to go even further than what he said in the article. Okay, so that's going to be the main point today, understanding the 5 different levels of happiness. Now, before I begin, I'd like to again request that if the more of you that can show your faces, it's a little bit nice, because then the speaker gets also a little bit more enthusiasm. Otherwise, it's like you're kind of speaking to yourself. So if some of you can kindly show, that would be great. And with that, we'll begin. So last time we made one important distinction, and that is when this topic, why we need God. So I think I told you last time that the topic on its face, it seems if anybody tells any of us, you need God, immediately we'll say, no, I don't. And who are you to tell me I need God? Okay? And especially in Semitic religions, I don't know if some might be coming from a Christian background or Islamic background, but that approach works there. They say that you need this, you need that. But Thakur ki boleche, when the child is hungry, then he'll eat. So when we talk about religion and spirituality from the Vedantic context, we always included upon it this concept of democracy. You don't need anything. It's up to you to decide what you need and what you don't need. All we can do is just present to you what's there. Another thing we talk about in Vedanta, this is very customized, especially according to Swami Vivekananda. You tell me, and I can challenge anybody on this. What other acharya besides Swamiji has said, yes, you can achieve the goal through jnana, bhakti, meditation, karma yoga, or a combination of all the four. So what did Swamiji mean by that? This is customized, not one size fits all. So for us, what we have to do is we have to understand ultimately what works for us according to our samskaras. We have to find out. You can receive the mantra, you can receive all these things. These are very important. But ultimately, nobody can tell you what your path is except for your guru. So this is you can say it's both democratic as well as very scientific. And I gave the example last time. Sri Ramakrishna told Girish Ghosh he had forced somebody to come to this Rath Yatra celebration in Balaram Bose's house. And after the celebration, the man left without saying anything. Then Sri Ramakrishna told Girish Ghosh, আমি বারবার বলছি, don't force anyone. ঝড় থেকে কেউ আনবেন না. Don't force anybody to come. Okay. And now we see that even in, of course, this is different. This is not for children. If you have children, if you're living abroad, you have children, it's okay to bring them, even if they don't want to come. Why? Their minds are not so mature yet. Their buddhis are not so mature. So we can introduce them to new concepts. And then later on, we can see how they fructify. Especially, that's an important point to note. But once you're past a certain stage, you should not force anybody. Rather, you can say it has the opposite effect. Rather than encouraging them towards religion, it really it's very off-putting. Another thing we talked about last time, when we bring children, it's very important. Two things are very important. Number one, for the parents, for the guardians, it's very important for us to try to live that life ourselves. We're telling them to do one thing, and yet we're not practicing that ourselves. So you know that very famous saying, what you are is so loud that I cannot hear what you are saying. So like that, when you can't force anyone, our lives have to be a role model. That's one thing. And secondly, when children have questions, we should be able to answer the questions in a scientific, logical way. Why don't I, without washing my hands and touching my mouth, why don't I touch this food? We have to explain all. There's a scientific and logical explanation. And if we don't know, that's okay, but we should find out. Sometimes growing up, whatever our parents say, we just accept that, right? They recently had just a small divert. I think it was circulating on YouTube or WhatsApp. I think it's a Korean lady, a Korean mother, young mother, and she's telling her young daughter not to swallow watermelon seeds. And the daughter asks, why not? And then the mother has to pause, because my mother said a watermelon will grow in your stomach then, and then your stomach will explode. And then the young bacha, she replied, that's not what daddy said. Daddy said that nothing will happen. It takes 7 to 8 years and nothing will happen. It'll disintegrate in the stomach because of the acidity of the stomach. And then the mother says, is that right? So I gave a previous example of Sri Ramakrishna when he, in that talk I had given, Sri Ramakrishna and the growth mindset. And I won't go over it again, but just to remind you, when Sri Ramakrishna in Kamarpukur, when he used to, there's a certain place where the ladies would take bath, and then they would become undressed, take bath. So Sri Ramakrishna, as a young boy, they said, don't watch. So Sri Ramakrishna went and watched. Then someone said, don't watch. Then Sri Ramakrishna asked why. Gadadhar asked why. Then the lady replied, because if you watch, a ghost will come and break your neck. So Thakur didn't say anything. Then for 3 more days he watched as the ladies became undressed, taking bath. Then he went and told that old lady, you see, I watched for 3 days and nothing happened. Then Sri Ramakrishna's mother took Gadadhar aside and remember what she told him? You don't watch, nothing bad will happen to you, but if you watch them, their sense of honor gets insulted. When they get insulted, I also feel insulted. Is it good to insult them as well as me? So you see this intrinsic type of explanation, not top down, not don't ask this question, not trying to scare us with an explanation. A ghost will come and break your neck. No, there is an explanation. Same thing in religion too. Same thing in spirituality. We have to understand the answers when people ask questions. So that's one thing we talked about last time. And then we also did mention that in households where children, especially in Semitic religions, where they are forced to attend church, studies have found that children tend to be more judgmental and less sympathetic, less unselfish. Children who attend churches, who are forced to go, and one of the problems is not with the church, it's with the church, with the teachings, the way it's being presented, and also it's with the parents themselves. But another argument might be that whatever the churches are teaching, the parents set the role model at home, and therefore that would be that is more powerful and more influential than what the churches teach. Okay, so now what we talked about last time is another practical definition of God by Swami Chidekanandaji. Not what we give. God is not a being in the air, in the heavens. It's not in our heart, but it's what we give most value to. In practical terms, that's our God. Okay? What we give most value to. As Sri Ramakrishna said, what we shed tears for at night. Thakur বলেছেন in Bengali, মানুষ টাকা স্ত্রী এবং সন্তানের জন্য চোখের জল ফেলে. So man, when he sleeps at night, he sheds tears for his wife, children, and money, wife, and children. Then he continues, কিন্তু যদি তারা শুধুমাত্র একদিনের জন্য ঈশ্বরের জন্য কাঁদে, তবে তারা অবশ্যই তাকে দেখতে পাবে. So he said, even if for one night they shed that type of tears that we shed for our wife, our family, our money, the stock market. How did the stock market do? It's not only shedding tears, it's that anxiety in our heart, that our heart keeps keeping us up at night. So if one day we can have that type of vaculata, that type of intensity for God, then you see that how much we could realize him or her. So then we ask why we need God. So according to the scriptures, I mentioned this last time, Atyantika dukkha nivritti paramananda praptischa. For the end of this suffering which is innate to this world, and for the attainment of supreme bliss. This is the reason why, according to our scriptures, we require spirituality. United States Constitution, I discussed this last time, they say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the goal of life. So you can see the different perspectives on the goal of life. Now, I want to focus today on one thing, this ananda, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What does happiness actually mean? We're going to discuss that a little today. If we seek the spiritual path, what type of happiness do we get? Now, this is where I'm going to turn to an article that was written by Swami Chidekanandaji in the Prabhupada Bharata. It was called The Laws of Happiness. Before that, I was struck by a quote that Swami Brahmananda had told Swami Yatishwarananda. Before Yatishwaranji, I think some of you may have heard of him and even met him maybe a long time ago. He was the head of the Bangalore Center, and he was initiated by Swami Brahmananda, the spiritual son of Sri Ramakrishna. So before Yatishwaranji became a monk, Brahmananda had told him, you give your body and mind to worldly enjoyments, and the world will destroy both of them. Devote them to God and His service, and you will enjoy bodily health, peace of mind, and spiritual joy. In fact, this is, in our scriptures too, we talk about the first requirement for spirituality, it's good health. Shariram adyam kulam dharma sadhanam. First requirement for spiritual practice is what? To have good health. That's a necessity in the beginning. Now, I want to discuss these different levels of happiness. In this article Swami Bhajanji had written, he mentioned 5 different levels of happiness. First level, all beings exist at different levels of consciousness. And for every level of consciousness, there is a definite and fixed degree of happiness. We're going to especially discuss this today and the second law of happiness. We'll get back to this, what this means. Second law of happiness. Before we go, the first level of happiness, what he meant actually, he was going according to the Taittiriya Upanishad. And the Taittiriya Upanishad talks about 5 different koshas. The Annamaya kosha, which is what we call the body sheath. Our identification is with the body. The Pranamaya kosha. Our identification is with the vital energy. We'll go over this. Third level of happiness. Manomaya kosha. Our identification is with our mind. Fourth level, this Vijnanamaya kosha. Our level of identification is with our spiritual intuition. And fifth level of happiness, Anandamaya kosha. Our level of happiness is with our bliss. We'll get back to that. Second level of law of happiness, the degree of happiness associated with each level or sub-level is independent of external events. Third law of happiness, effort is needed only to remove the obstacles of happiness. In other words, what he's saying is, happiness is already within us. Just like Swamiji said, knowledge is already within us. Divinity is already within us. It's not a question of acquiring something outside. The only question is what? To remove the obstacles. And then it automatically will come out. Fourth law of happiness. There is an urge in all human beings to seek higher forms of happiness. And fifth law of happiness. In order to get higher degrees of happiness, one has to bring about corresponding changes in one's consciousness. So let's start with the first one. First law of happiness. All beings exist at different levels of consciousness. And for every level of consciousness, there is a definite and fixed degree of happiness. So, let's give examples. What do I mean by this? Say this Annamaya kosha. We all understand Anna literally means the food sheath. Food is what? This human body is nothing but made up of food. So, especially all of us identify with the body, but especially those who particularly spend a lot of their energy identifying with this physical human body. So like say bodybuilders, athletes, models, actors, people who after some time we're so identified that if we start to get older and something starts to get out of place, maybe they might put a Botox injection, right, to keep the skin of the fur, the outer sheath of the body firm. Why do they do this? Because their center of gravity is in the body itself. This is Annamaya Kosha. And we see this when we identify with this very strongly. We see ourselves, we see others, we see everybody as bodies, nothing more than bodies, objects of enjoyment. This causes problems too. If we're too identified with the body, it causes problems also in our work. I remember when I was, I'll just give one quick example. I remember when I was working as an attorney. So I joined, and I think a few other people joined with me. And so at that time, I remember that, I shouldn't say this, but one very talented African-American girl had joined. And she was very smart, very intelligent. And yet what I saw, and this is not her problem, this is the problem of society. We literally, the way society is constructed, say in the courtroom, outside, it can be very patriarchal. So it literally forced, especially women, to focus more on their looks, focus more on what they're wearing, how they're wearing their hair. And this really, it takes out the energy, because actually in everybody, and I remember in her, this brightness is there, this sharp intellect. But what happens is that prana gets diverted. That sense of what? Identification gets diverted to where? To the body consciousness. The more the mind is on the body, it's impossible to think higher thoughts. Forget about higher thoughts. It's even very difficult to do even anything productive in the world. The more we get identified and caught with that. That's the first. You can say that all these different, the Annamaya, Pranamaya, Manomaya, they're all made from the same material, according to Vedanta, the three gunas. But it's the Annamaya Kosha, the physical body, which will be the first to disintegrate. Okay, this is the Annamaya Kosha. Pranamaya Kosha. This is identification with one's energy level. Now, I was actually, it's not clear what the Taittiriya Upanishad was saying, what they meant by that, Pranamaya Kosha. Again, Swami Vivekananda talks about prana in a different way in the first part of his Raja Yoga lectures. That's not what we're talking about here. Sri Aurobindo talked about this Pranamaya Kosha, this vital energy sheath. What did he mean by that? He meant the impulses, drives, our emotions. This is the vital energy sheath. And this is where you see some people, they spend time on their body. Other people spend more time on their thoughts, their impulses, their drives. Oh, this person insulted me. Brooding over those things. In Yoga Sutras, we call this kleshas. This is this Pranamaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha. Again, this is different. This is identification with one's thoughts. But I would say it's more in the realm of ideas. Scientists, professors, chess players, engineers, philosophers, researchers. Now, I put there includes emotional drives, but actually Sri Aurobindo said these emotional drives, they're actually in the Pranamaya Kosha. So I'm separating them there. So you might see somebody doing a PhD. So during that time where they're doing the PhD or preparing for an examination, for example, so where will their mind be more? Their mind will be more at the Manomaya Kosha level, right? Now, if somebody is a model and they're getting ready to walk the runway, so then where will their mind be? It will be more at where? Anyone want to say? The Annamaya Kosha, the physical body level. Now, it's not just our minds alternate. don't think that, oh no, it's not like that. Everybody's mind traverses, especially between these three, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha. It traverses between these three. Another thing I want to say, you can have a scientist, a professor, even a chess player. After sometimes what happens, anything that you do, things become, what happens if you do something continuously, it becomes more mechanical. So, it might seem from externally that a judge, a scientist, a professor, their mind should be dwelling at the Manomaya level. But no, they can easily be dwelling at the body level or the pranic level. Okay, so it's very difficult to judge from outside. The fourth level, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and this is more identification with the spiritual intuition. This is for those we have not realized God, but we like thinking about the life of Ramakrishna, the teachings of Swami Vivekananda. We like thinking about Advaita Vedanta. Say we watch a lecture on Swami Sarvapriyananda. So we're in tune with that. So we like thinking about those things more. Okay? This is this realm of spiritual thoughts. Vijnanamaya Kosha. And the last one, Anandamaya Kosha. Realization of oneself as Ananda or Brahman. As a servant of God, if you're a bhakta. If you're a Vishishta Advaita, as Ishwara Angsha, as a part of Ishwara. Now, I'm primarily concerned with these first three, Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha, because that's where we really dwell for most of the time. So, one insight that I had, yes, we need a certain level of stability in these first three koshas in order to go to this Vijnanamaya Kosha. What do I mean? Annamaya Kosha. We need a certain degree of healthiness in the body. Pranamaya Kosha. We need a certain amount of healthiness in our vital energy. This includes our own impulses and drives. What the Yoga Sutras say about making our, reducing our desires, okay, reducing our kleshas. And our Manomaya Kosha. We need a certain degree of healthiness in our thoughts. Each of these different levels of koshas, they all receive food. The Annamaya Kosha, it receives physical food. The Pranamaya Kosha, this vital energy, it's also receiving food. That same food, physical food we take, that's also converted into prana, into vital energy. You know, like in the Upanishads, they say that how is prana connected to physical food? Okay, if you stop eating food for a day or two, then you'll see how your prana comes down, how your energy comes down, right? So there's a connection between physical food and prana. Manomaya Kosha. Yes, physical food can, the Gita says that, the type of food we eat can affect our thoughts. Now, that goes both ways, of course. At the same time, Ramakrishna said that if one eats beef and keeps their mind on God, or pork and keeps their mind on God, then what's the harm? And one can be a vegetarian and constantly think very worldly and very thoughts of very bad thoughts. But there's another different type of thinking there too. Mental food. Can anybody tell me what mental food would be? The food that we receive from, Shankaracharya talks about this. The type of information we are receiving. Day and night we're watching the internet. We're hooked to the internet, right? That's mental food. That's affecting our Manomaya Kosha. Just like this physical food is affecting our Annamaya Kosha. So they say that we should really have a healthy, not only physical diet, but also mental diet. And mental diet means the type of information we are receiving. Even in our Yoga Sutras, it says this. Whatever information we're receiving, it does not go, it gets deposited either in the conscious or the unconscious, unknown to us, right? This is why I might see a commercial about ice cream, maybe a half an hour ago. I didn't even notice it. But later in the day, I feel like having ice cream. So I go and order some ice cream. So how much information is coming? And so that's why we have to be try to be alert when living. We have to be very alert what type of information we are receiving. So that's the first law of happiness, that all beings are fixed at different levels of consciousness. And so all of us, we traverse, especially between these first three levels, but we're more predominantly in one level than another. That's important to understand. Second law of happiness, the degree of happiness associated with each level or sub-level is independent of external events. So Bhajanji writes about this: as long as a person remains at a certain level of consciousness, he can get only the degree of happiness natural to that particular level, whatever be the type of work he is doing. For example, when one is hungry, I think I talked about this. Let me give you proof. When one is hungry, for example, say that sweets, for example. So when one person is hungry, they might prefer rasagollas. Another is this Shakti Ghor Langchas. If you're from South India, this Mysore Pak. And those from Western countries, maybe Haagen-Dazs ice cream, okay? Thank God this Swiggy is there. They sell this online now in India. Okay. Anyways, what it's saying is that from this Annamaya Kosha, we might think differently, but whatever happiness you get, there's a maximum amount of happiness you can get. So say that you have not taken Rasagollah for a long time and you take. So that for one moment, that sense of ananda that you get, that can't go beyond a certain range. We call that, in the Taittiriya Upanishad, we call that 1 unit of happiness. Same thing with all these other items. It doesn't differ. In fact, I'm going to add one thing to this. In addition to this, there's something called a diminishing law of happiness, diminishing law of enjoyment. For example, I went to Deoghar, this Parashanath. I was doing some hiking there with another monk. And I was so thirsty. And then somebody came and we bought some freshly squeezed orange juice. So I had it. The first one I had, it was like heaven. It was the equivalent of the best Rasagollah, the best ice cream. Then I decided to take one more. The second one I had, it was good, but not as good as the first. Then I had one more. And even that slowly, I was thinking, what's wrong with this orange juice? No, nothing's wrong with the orange juice. It's called the diminishing law of enjoyment. Okay? And that's anything we have, we continue to have it. It's after some time, it begins to be diminished. So this, please understand, two things are there. In any level of, whether it's Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, there's a range of happiness you cannot go beyond. You can't have more Rasagollas and then they'll increase your happiness. That's one thing. Now, the same law applies for addictions. Whether it's excessive eating, excessive drinking. Sometimes when people drink, the first drink that they have, it's something wonderful for them, you know. They have one drink first and they think, oh, this is like heaven. But then after some time, what happens? You keep drinking, so you become like this gentleman in the middle right here, right? So eating, drinking, even watching the internet. When you first watch the internet, you get a serotonin rush. But after some time, you see this. All three of these people, they're almost like getting in an unconscious state. In all three people, this ability to think, feel, and will has all been compromised. You understand that? This is what we call the diminishing law of happiness. So this exists at the Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, and Pranamaya Kosha. In fact, Sri Ramakrishna did an experiment in his own life with 3 different things. One time he really had a desire for a moleskin wrapper, a shawl. So I think Mathur Babu bought him one. So for 3 days he took that moleskin wrapper, he slept with it, he wore it this side, that side. Then after 3 days he put it to one side and said, this is what a moleskin wrapper is. Same thing with food. On one occasion, he had a desire to eat lots of food, all the best sweets in the world. So Mathur Babu kept him in a room with huge amounts of food. So for 3 days, Thakur ate. Then after 3 days, he got tired. He said, this is what you call the enjoyment of food. And same thing, this Hubble bubble right here. So for 3 days, Thakur, he took this Hubble bubble from all sides. And after some time, he got tired of it. So he showed that this is the diminishing law of enjoyment regarding the Annamaya Kosha. Now, this Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, family level, this deals with emotions. This is also necessary too. Healthy emotions, healthy relationships. This is the beginning of spiritual life. This is why we say that in spiritual life, you need, without strong body, without healthy relationships, you can't go to the next level. First, you have to have some degree of stability in Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, and Manomaya Kosha. Okay? That's really important to understand. I think I used the term homeostasis. 343. Now, another thing, you could see this even in this also applies to work. So in work, for example, that you might think being a judge, being a business CEO, being a judge, being a business CEO, being a doctor, you might think that these are very stimulating professions. But no, there's only a certain level of happiness that you can get from it. And what we find more and more is that even in these professions, which we so call intellectual professions, but actually lots of times the CEO of a company is not thinking dynamic, innovative thoughts. Most of the time they're spending replying to emails. Same thing with judges. It's not that you're getting this once-in-a-lifetime case and you're thinking day and night how to solve it. Most of the time, it's just very drudgery type work. Same thing with a doctor. You can see this doctor here. He's so tired, he's sleeping, and the patient is watching him. So most of the time, all these professions we think of, that they should be existing at the Manomaya Kosha, but no, they're actually just, they're very, all different types of works, all different types of activities, they only have a certain degree of intellectual stimulation, and they only give a certain degree of happiness as well.
So Maharajji, if we want to have question and answers.
Go ahead, you can ask now. I've presented a lot of information.
Okay, so I see, Sirish, you have a question. I see in the message box. Can you ask your question very briefly so that Maharajji can give a satisfactory.
Sure.
Please.
Namaskar Maharaj. Question here is when it comes to samskaras, right? When we do something again and again, even if it is negative, so it forms as samskara and it will propel to do the same thing again. So how does it go with the diminishing law of happiness? Because there it is propelling you to do more, and you are not getting the vairagya or something after enjoying 3 or 4 more orange juices or ice cream. So yeah,
right. That's a serious question actually, and otherwise if that were the case, what you're saying is true. Then why doesn't it? Then everybody would get vairagya, right?
Exactly.
Then why is there only one Buddha? And why is there only one Buddha? Buddha has all the, what we talk about applies to Buddha. He had all the wealth in the world, a beautiful wife, beautiful children. So he got that really quickly. So the I'll refer you to the 15th sutra of the second chapter of the Yoga Sutras. Parinama dukkha, parinama dukkha. He talks about 4 different types of dukkha. One is parinama dukkha. Another is this tapa dukkha. Another is sanskara dukkha. Another is guna vritti virodhacha. Dukkham eva sarvam vivekinaha. So this parinama dukkha is what? It's like preemptive suffering. That when a yogi or a spiritual person, when they're going through this even enjoyment, they see the suffering afterwards. So what Ramakrishna talked about this nitya nitya viveka vastu, that those of us who apply discrimination, this level of discrimination, even at the time of enjoyment. You understand what I'm saying? So for those, and you can also say it's past lifetimes, that people who have really enjoyed, they say monks, for example, or advanced devotees. They'll say that in their past lives they've been kings. So in this life, they've reached that tipping point, that and begin to see the repetition of what you call the sense enjoyment. To reach that tipping, it's like a critical mass. And that can't just be done by vichara. But that's why as spiritual aspirants, whether it's Vedanta or even Ramakrishna, he always talked about that. Discriminating between the real and the unreal. Not only in suffering, but also in happiness. So that's why Ramakrishna, after 3 days of smoking the hookah pipe or eating food, he got tired of it, right? He never went back. So, but you're right, for most people it doesn't happen. But us as spiritual aspirants, it's possible, that's actually a goal of ours, in the time of happiness, to apply that level of vichara. See that this too will pass. It won't stay.
Any other question? Or Sirish, you have any? Maybe we have another 3-4 minutes.
No, Rebel, I'm not good. Thank you. Thanks, Maharaj.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? And I'll take the opportunity to inform you that on 18th of January, Maharajji will conclude with another lecture. And on next Sunday, Ayan Maharaj, that is Medhanandaji Maharaj, will speak from San Diego, and his topic will be the yoga of prayer. Since he will be speaking from San Diego, the timing on Sunday will be 9:30 a.m. India time and 12:00 noon Philippines time. 12:00 noon Philippine time and 9:30 a.m. in India time, and we'll send you the link. And for Maharajji, 18th January he will conclude. But any very short question you can do. Otherwise, we will give the vote of thanks to the participants and our respected Maharajji, who has always been so kind and source of inspiration for us. Any question? Short question? Looks like none. If you have any question in the beginning, you can send it us in advance also, based on 2 discussions, so that we'll transmit it to Maharajji. We take this opportunity to thank Maharaj profusely. And Udanandaji, please.
No, and since there is a time, 8 minutes, 7 minutes, one song we can have from, and then we can finish.
So now we have Ranjanadi. If he wants to, she wants to sing, but maybe we have to time it. So
7 minutes are there, right?
7 minutes there. Okay, very good. So just 1 minute before we conclude. So 6 minutes you can kindly use. You also can check the time, Ranjanadi. Ranjanadi, you are muted.
You are muted.
Ranjanadi, you are muted. Now you are okay.
প্রভু আমারো প্রিয় আমারো পরম ধন চির পথের সঙ্গী হে প্রভু আমারো প্রিয় আমারো আমার অতৃপ্তি
We seem to have lost Ranjanadi. Can you come back? You are muted. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Ranjana Bhattacharya, for such beautiful devotional song. And thank you, Maharaji, once again. On behalf of Chidekanandaji Maharaj, we thank you profusely and also
thank you. Hoping to see you on 18th soon. 18th. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
18th, he will come as a guest. And of course, 18th of January. 18th of January. 18th December, you are most cordially invited to hear Ayan Maharaj, if your time permits. Okay, we can conclude with these words.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
I'll take 30 seconds to end the recording.